Surprise attacks and ambushes are something that comes up often in most tabletop games, and this is especially relevant in GURPS, because the system doesn't really concern itself with presenting balanced encounters that scale with the power of the player party, but instead simulates believable combat situations from the in-universe perspective, and real combat is rarely fair. The advantage of surprise is something that can tip the scales in your favor. However, the rules for surprise in GURPS is something people prefer not to talk about. Let's see why. The rules for surprise attacks and initiative can be found on page 393 of GURPS basic set, and they take up only half a page. In GURPS, there are two degrees of surprise, total and partial. When the defenders do not expect trouble at all, are asleep or taken completely by surprise in any other way, they freeze for 1d seconds. They are mentally stunned and must take the do-nothing maneuver. Then, when this initial freeze ends, each defender may roll against his basic IQ at the start of each of his turns to recover from stun. A character with combat reflexes never experiences total surprise. For them, it is automatically downgraded to partial surprise. Now, what's partial surprise? It happens if the defenders were expecting trouble, or if both parties surprised each other. In this case, each side makes an initiative roll. This initiative roll has nothing to do with the turn order. This is something completely different. An initiative roll is a roll of 1d, which is something GURPS doesn't do often. The roll is made by the side's leader. You get a +2 if the leader has combat reflexes, or +1 if the leader does not, but someone else in the group does. The leader with a higher IQ gets another +1. A point in tactics gives another +1, or even +2 if you know tactics at 20 or higher. A side that is totally leaderless gets a -2 penalty, but this does not apply to animals. The side that loses this roll is surprised. They are all mentally stunned and must make IQ rolls on their turns to recover. However, on each turn after the first, they get a cumulative +1 bonus to this roll. Combat reflexes give +6 to these IQ rolls to recover from surprise. Do you see any problems with this? The first one is animals. The book does say that many wild animals have combat reflexes, but if an animal does not have combat reflexes, then if you achieve total surprise, the animal would be stuck in perpetual mental stun. Let's assume a sleeping god with IQ 3. According to GURPS Low-Tech Companion 3, this is a domestic animal without combat reflexes, although this may be the case when some traits were just omitted from the stat block. You sneak up to the god and startle it. Now it will be mentally stunned for a very long time, because total surprise doesn't have a cumulative recovery bonus. But why stop there? Let's assume a chicken from the same book. Poultry has poultry IQ 2. If you achieve total surprise, by rules as written, it would be mentally stunned forever, because you cannot roll against a number lower than 3 unless you are rolling an active defense. There's been an argument that perception should replace IQ for animals, but why don't humans use perception for that then? The second problem is that the rules are not granular enough. Either an entire side gets surprised or nobody gets surprised. Imagine a group of combat-hardened adventurers escorting a group of peasants through the dark woods. They get ambushed by an orcish warband, but if the adventure leader didn't lose the initiative roll, then even the peasants who never saw any combat before aren't surprised at all. Wouldn't it make more sense to make surprise an individual thing and not a group thing? Then, did you notice that I said didn't lose instead of won? Imagine the same situation again, and the ambushed escort won the initiative roll. Now the orcs are surprised and mentally stunned, despite them being the ambushers. Does this make any sense? One could say that they are surprised by the fact that their prey is not surprised, but this sounds like mental gymnastics to me. What if there are multiple sides? Imagine a squad of elves fighting a band of orcs. Then, suddenly, a dragon swoops in. One could say that both elves and orcs now constitute a single side, but that would mean that all of them get stunned if they lose the initiative. and it couldn't be that only orcs or only elves got stunned. Now that I think about it, what if the dragon lost the initiative and got surprised and stunned? Then it would plummet to the ground and possibly die. In the same way, anyone moving at high speed, such as a horse, would trip and possibly break a leg according to the rules. That's more or less believable, to be honest. However, a mounted rider on a horse that is not moving at all will have a good chance of falling out of the saddle if he gets surprised. There are some rules interactions with the mental stun condition that make me think that there should be a separate surprise condition. So what are the alternatives? There actually aren't many. First, there is the optional rule from GURPS Horror that I like, called Flight or Frenzy. It can be found in the Not Just Stunned box on page 141. After 1 second of stun, the character must either flee the scene at his highest move, or attack the frightening stimulus as if berserk. This provides an alternative to mental stun from fright checks, and may be applied in some cases to mental stun from surprise, especially for animals. GURPS Dungeon Fantasy 16 Wilderness Adventures has rules for ambushes on pages 37-38. Honestly, they make much more sense than the rules from the basic set, as they tie in stealth and perception, and also let you determine the starting engagement distance, which is nice. However, they are still group and side based, and they are not very generic, but still an improvement. Similar, more streamlined rules that focus on dungeon encounters can be found in DFRPG Exploits on pages 26-27. As far as official material goes, I believe that's it. Let's check what other people suggest. Everything will be linked in the description. First mention goes to a very recent post on the Cry Havoc blog, devoted to running a Twilight 2000 game using GURPS. The author reworked the surprise rules to make them more sensible. Gaming Ballistic has an article about initiative and the OODA loops in GURPS that doesn't really rework the rules but provides some clarification from Chrome. Finally, Dungeon Fantastic has alternative surprise rules for Dungeon Fantasy. Overall, there is still not much, and I haven't devised any rules that would satisfy me either. Surprise seems to be one of the weakest parts of GURPS, unfortunately, and I'll probably have to look to other systems to find surprise rules that satisfy my needs, or write something myself. Anyway, thank you for watching, I will see you next time.